Hunter x Hunter chapter 410 was absolutely incredible. We are now back on hiatus, but what a way to go out. This was truly a banger. This was an incredible chapter. So we start off the chapter. Of course, I've got my notes as always. We start off with Morena. She seems on edge. Something isn't quite right. And it turns out that Borskin is having these conflicting thoughts where she's a bit unsure of the decision she's made. From the last chapter, we saw that she joins Haley essentially by having yes as her last card. And this is because apparently Morena's figured out that Borskin has cheated and she feels disappointments. This disappointment comes from Borskin so heavily pushing that their side was the one that's cheating. And this was very smart on her behalf. Because first of all, if you're constantly saying, let's make sure there's no cheating, it sort of alleviates, of course, the suspicion within yourself. Because why would someone who's cheating argue so much for a fair game? And also, it means that by her being the only one that's cheating and by her working out that they're not cheating, it means that she can be more effective. And we work out when this happened. This happened when she was checking the cards, ironically, to make sure that Morena wasn't cheating. And this is when she put a small indent on the front of the return card, and then she could see it. So that was very clever from her. And then we see that, of course, Morena explains her ability more. She kind of does an analogy that it's very similar to a love game where people fall in love with you and you can keep going until you reach max level 100 and then become the owner of such game. And Borskin immediately falls to the ground. We don't know why that is. Maybe it's just, mental exhaustion. Maybe it's something to do with an inability. Because as Morena said, she is currently level 0. So she's not officially, already in the system, but she is at least recognized by the system of her inability. So I think it is, implied that it has a correlation. And the thing I find very interesting is that Morena explains what she can do, right? Morena has quite a bit of control over these Haley members. She can see their location, their level number, the points, their status. So it means that she is very much in a favorable position. Also, Morena specified that infighting is allowed, if not too flagrant. So that's interesting because right now Haley are really building up to be this almost indestructible force, right? They're gaining in numbers, gaining in strength. They're still not the main players in the succession contest, and there's still, stronger forces out there, but they're rapidly building in strength and in momentum. So it's good to know that maybe there could be a situation like with the Chimera Ants when they started, disagreeing with each other and they all split up. Because it would have been harder to take out the king and the guards if they were all the soldier ants right there too. So after this, we go on to, of course, martial law that's being, enforced in Tier 3. It's being quite heavily enforced. We see, of course, all the soldiers and everyone that's lined up with their hands behind their back. And there seems to be a real sense of urgency. And we see that, of course, special S has been called. And case S is that a supernatural incident. So for us, we know it's Nen. And this means that they have found something that they deem to be worthy of telling Benjamin about. And it turns out it's actually the Haley hideouts, right? We saw Nobunaga and the Phantom Troop go through this door, and in the bathroom, they teleported to the Haley hideout. And the Royal Army has found it, and some of their troops have already been teleported there. So first of all, of course, those troops have been murked by Haley, of course, just empowering Haley more and giving them suspicion that they've been caught. So I don't think that Haley's in deep trouble because we've seen how much they've been planning in advance. So they probably have a majority of escape routes. Of course, we saw that Morena admitted there was 5 or 7, I can't remember exactly, different entrances. So they have a lot of ways of getting out of this. So I don't think it's too much of a threat for them. What I find interesting is that they immediately tell Benjamin about it. And Benjamin doesn't look the same. There's something off about him, right? He says, I need to get all of them in 10 hours. Which immediately, at first, for me, I thought that Halkenberg had taken over his body. I was like, whoa, okay. Halkenberg's doing this quick because he needs to get back to his body. I was thinking, how did he go from, of course, Balsamico's body to of course, Benjamin's? But no, it turns out that Benjamin has been infected by the poisonous disease that he himself had sent out Balsamico to get Halkenberg with. So Halkenberg has done the ultimate Uno reversal, and it's quite interesting. It's almost quite ironic and funny in a way. But we've never seen Benjamin this serious. It's very interesting. He says that he's rounding up the princes. He's got all of the princes, the higher princes. He's saying he's getting the lower ones later. So, of course, Oito and Karapaka yet are still in the clear. But he's saying the only ones missing are Lazarus and Zhang Lei. Lazarus, we know about the Zodiac plot to kill him. Of course, that Kaiser's, the mastermind of. So, is he already dead? That could be a possibility. But if not, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. And we see that Zhang Lei has retreated. Right before martial law got cold, Zhang Lei went down to tier 2. And he was seeing, of course, the judicial system and potentially even his mafia clan. So it's very interesting. Does he have insider information? How did he manage to do this in advance? And what is he planning? Has his coin finally leveled up? There's a lot of questions, and it's very rigorous in the sense that everything is happening at once. We had this very slow build, of course, at the start of the chapter with Morena and Borskin's game that ended. That was quite slow paced, right? This one game of cards had lasted 3 chapters. So just this sudden switch up felt very real, authentic, and it caught me by surprise. Just like the events of the auction in Yorknew caught us all by surprise. Just from the moments of Morena saying, we're your family too now, we're your people. And then all of a sudden, there's this sudden rush, this royal army that's trying to take out all the princes at once within this 10-hour period, which is quite crazy, right? And we see that Soreinik is the one that's getting pinned for this, which I find absolutely insane, right? Because, of course, we go to the fact that, that they're trying to get all the princes that are left, right? There's 4 princes they're still to get. And we see that they come in this room, most likely the judicial room, right? It seemed a bit like it, because they're searching still for Zhang Lei. And on their way, they find Kaiser with Botobai and with Mizai. So this is pretty hype, because we've got the Zodiacs here. And they're kind of saying, hold on. What's your reasoning for declaring martial law? Well, where's the king's consent? Very logical questions, because it's clear that Benjamin, in this frantic rush, is trying to just impose just the image, right, to martial law, this absolute rule, without even going through the proper legislations. He was saying that the king's letter, the king's consent, essentially, is being done as we speak. Whether it is or not, we don't know, but most likely. And the very interesting thing is that Mizai is immediately analyzing the situation. He's saying, okay, Benjamin has just exposed himself as a dictator. This is a problem. So Mizai is probably going to have the Zodiacs be orientated in a way that's anti-Benjamin. So it's going to be an interesting faction within the moving pieces. I found that the Zodiacs weren't utilized enough. That was my big complaint. One of my biggest with this arc is I felt that some of the established characters like the Zodiacs felt like they were just kind of there, We saw Leorio, Cheeto, we can see what they're doing, but they're not involved directly within the plot threads. And this is what I wanted. The fishing hook, right? They've been attached. They've been anchored to the plot line of Benjamin. And I really love that. And we see that Botobai is immediately on Benjamin. For the guys that are fans of Botobai, this is an incredible moment for him, because he's not playing any games. He goes straight to Benjamin. He says, "Your Highness, you okay?" It was almost like provocative in the way he said it, because he knows that Benjamin isn't okay. He's just trying to let Benjamin know that he knows. And it's quite amazing, because Benjamin he tries to put on this tough face, and he's like, "I'm perfectly okay." And it's like, okay. And Kaiser sees his opportunity, right? He knows that, of course, he's got ties to everyone. He's the big mastermind. He's the Riddler. He's the Joker. He's the person that's playing all the pieces and positions. He's saying, okay, if I can just delay this one day, we'll get, of course, Benjamin out of the equation, and this whole succession war will be a lot easier with martial law out of the way. And it's very intriguing, because we don't really know who his loyalty lies to truly. We see that he's connected, of course, to Haley and Morena, which is super dangerous, because he's there with all the informants and all the new information. He's directly in correlation with Benjamin, and Benjamin's looking for Haley. But we don't know truly what his end goal is. He's one of those characters that is very mysterious, right? we see him in every single position. It almost reminds me of Pariston, right? Pariston's someone that loves just playing the game. He's someone that be all cheery and happy, and then he's, very dark, talking about using chimera ants to pass the next hunter exam. He very much gives me that vibe of, you can be someone that you can see in any context, someone that's a very dynamic figure that doesn't truly have any certain loyalty. That's my impression from him and his characterization, and just the way we see him in these introspective positions where he's clearly pondering on some deep thoughts. And yes, going back to the Cyrenaic plotline that I, of course, hinted at earlier, they're trying to pin it on him. They're trying to say that him and Halkenberg were the ones that had devised this contagion disease to take out Benjamin. And of course, that is warranted reason for martial law, because they could cause a virus, an outbreak, a pandemic across the Black Whale and potentially kill everyone. That's just kind of crazy, because Cyrenic is like such an evil character, right? He's just someone that's so sadistic and so animalistic. He very much has this feeling of he is superior and he has the right to choose what he does to people. Very much like Ahsoka during the Hunter exam, when he says, I'll play the role of examiner to see if you're worthy. It's very much that coldness about it. And yet, in this situation, he is innocent. And we know that he takes things really badly when he's being lied to, manipulated. We see that with Feta, where he just wants to know the truth. So this can be very interesting, because the way this has all been orchestrated is very much going to put Cyrenaic on the offensive, right? He's going to feel threatened. And the other thing is that it's been quite a bit of time since we've last seen him. And even when we did last see him, we didn't really check in too much with him. We saw that he lost a lot of weight. He was still training. He was still focusing on, getting his Zetsu absolutely mastered. But we saw that he was about to be sparring. So, of course, Nen combat, or Nen sparring in this case, is very much going to prepare him for what's happening. It makes me think a lot. This is a bit of an unrelated parallel. It makes me think of Emperor Palpatine from Star Wars Revenge of the Sith, when all the Jedi come and confront him, and he's just waiting for them and just goes and murks all of them. I think that something similar will happen with Cyrenaic, just because we've seen how much his potential is, limitless. He's really a 1 in 1 billion type of guy. And it's very interesting to see just how this will play out, because he's very much the main target. Of course, Zhang Lei. It's going to be interesting to see whether Zhang Lei can form an alliance with Cyrenaic, because that's my immediate thought. Of course, Cyrenaic is the one that's being pinned for it, but Zhang Lei is clearly in a position where he understands he doesn't have the same military power within himself. Of course, he's got the mafia families, but within just his tier and just his Nen ability, he is not the most combat effective. So I think he's looking for alliances. And of course, Karapika, with martial law, everything's going to change. It's going to be very, very intriguing to see how all the relationships, mix and match and twangle around, because it can't stay the same, because this is too big of a world event for everything to just go on as normal. And it's a very, very great chapter. Just to summarize my thoughts, right? I think that the start was very good, because it lulled us into a sense of just a sense of comfort, right? And then when the big twist happened and we get all these events of Halkenberg, it felt major. If we started off with that, we'd already be locked into that state of mind. But it's a sudden switch in tone, momentum, and just the stakes that makes it so effective. I think that Togashi does that best, is that he doesn't let us have our expectations dictate what happens. Because the expectation at the start would be that this plot line between, of course, Morena and Boskin would be the end of the chapter, and that would be the kind of final resolution. And then afterwards, we'd move on to all this stuff. But no, Togashi just mixed it all together. I thought the character interactions were brilliant. I thought the world building was great as well too, because we learned quite a lot about how the Kakin Empire works, about the succession contest, martial law. We saw about, of course, the king needs to agree to it. We see it in practicality, right? How it looks like visually, how it's depicted. We see how all the characters are reacting to it. We see the Zodiacs play in it. I think that it really expands Hunter x Hunter, and that is the perfect thing to do right before you go on hiatus. Get people excited. Someone like Togashi is very well aware of how he can manipulate the way we consume Hunter x Hunter to make it the best, of course. through the end of the last batch. Before this, we had the Phantom Troop flashback, but right before it ended, we got back into the action of things. So he's very good at that, Togashi. He's very good at keeping us engaged. And that's the thing I found best about this, is that I felt really engaged. I felt hyped, excited, eager. I really, of course, I write my notes as I'm doing this, but at some moments, I wanted to go, forget the notes. I want to turn the page right now. And that is the best thing a writer can do. There's a lot of technical aspects, I suppose, that maybe this chapter didn't do as well as some of the others, but in the end, I think to some degree that is intentional, because this wasn't really a chapter focused on exposition in the normal sense of it. It was a chapter focused on progression and on actually finishing threads and plot lines that had already been established. Of course, you can say that, yeah, this one's better because this one established all these things and it's the one that really took the story in more directions. But really, I think it's quite an art towards closing up threads and plot lines. And for that reason, I think that this is one of the stronger chapters in this batch of 10. In fact, I think that this is better than chapter 405 or 406. I'd probably have this as my number 2 in all of the batch. My number 1 being chapter 403. Of course, all of the chapters have been absolutely incredible. And yeah, I'm going to have to give this a 9 out of 10. It was stunning. It was, when you can't formulate words too much about what makes something great, you just know it's innately great. It shows just how nuanced it is. When I look back and I read back this chapter many times, I'll see all the little things that Togashi did. But from, a reaction point of view now, because of course the chapter only came out a few hours ago, so I've only had a limited amount of time to really process and to gather my thoughts, I really found that everything felt fluid, smooth, in the same sense that when Hunter x Hunter, all the arcs feel like they're connected to each other. This chapter felt the most connected a chapter has felt in a long time, probably since the Greed Island and before part of the story. Everything felt like it was happening as it should, when it should. And the fact that it did that without feeling stale, predictable, or without having any real negatives or keeping us completely engaged made it so expertly done. So that's the word I would use, expertly done. That's how I would summarize this chapter. And it's a sad day because we're back on hiatus. I'm going to miss these Sundays, right? My Sunday chapter reviews. I've gotten quite in the habit of it. But I suppose we're there waiting for you, Togashi. And whenever you feel good, we'll always be there. This was Heiju Gone. I hope you've all had an incredible day. Let me know what you think of this chapter down below. And yeah, if you got comments for suggestions you'd like me to do, please let me know. I hope you've all had an incredible day. If you like Hunter x Hunter, I do videos like this every single day, covering everything from Hunter x Hunter, from character analysis, chapter reviews, story arc reviews, everything Hunter x Hunter I do. So please subscribe if you love this series. And yes, this was Heiju Gone. Peace out.
羽ばたいたら戻らないと言って目指したのは青い青いあの空